Friend, it is Danny here from projectmaniverse.com, real world technical project management for beginners. And today I'm going to give you 3 common mistakes when it comes to your project design document. I'll explain what a design document is. I'll tell you why this is important for you to understand as a project manager, and then I'll go on to the 3 common mistakes. So let's dive into the video. First of all, what is a design document? Well, your design document is the detailed design of the solution or product that you are building on your project. Again, this is all about technical project management, so it's going to be a technical design. It will explain how the thing is going to work. It will explain the functionality. If there's any calculations in there, it will explain what those are. It really describes exactly how the thing is going to work in great detail, and it is basically the solution to your requirements. Your requirements could be seen as a set of problems to solve, and the design document is your solution. And the design document is used as a template for the build. So your engineers are going to refer to the design document when they build your product. Now, I will say that not all design documents are created equal. I've been on obviously many projects, and the design document always varies slightly. It varies in format and it varies in detail, but essentially it's pretty much the same. But sometimes some design documents will go into great detail about every single thing, every single specification. But sometimes I've been on projects where you'll have supplementary documents like a technical specification, which really goes into the detailed numbers and the specs of the database size and all that, and that's done in another document. Or you might get a configuration document as a supplement document, which describes the exact configuration of the application that you're building, and that's essentially the blueprint of the thing you're building. But the design document isn't really a blueprint. It describes how the solution will work. It will contain many pictures. It should do if it's a good one. So there'll be lots of pictures in there. There'll be lots of jargon in there, lots of terms that you don't understand as a project manager, and all that's fine. But that's essentially what your design document is. So that's what it is. Why is it important that you understand the design document, what it's for, and these common mistakes as a project manager? Well, number one, the design document, as I say, is the building block for your configuration and your development. So your engineers, the guys that they're going to be coding the application, they're going to be using this design document for your final solution. So this is almost like your last chance to get it right before they build the thing. And you may not get a chance to actually see it from an end user business perspective, see the application, what's being built, until way down the line after this design document is finished, because the engineers will start building it and then they'll go through various phases of testing. You may not be able to see the results of those earlier phases of testing, things like system testing or unit testing. You may have to wait until the user acceptance testing, which is usually right at the end, where the end user, the people that are going to be using the product ultimately, get to have a go at the application. And you don't want to leave it till then, until you find out that you've designed it wrong or you've got things wrong. So if you don't get this design document right, it could mean that your product is not going to be built right, and that could be bad for various reasons. So number one, it could cost you money to change it. You might need to do a change request and give that back to the engineers. They'll have to rebuild the thing. It could have a knock-on impact on other areas of the build. So it could cost you money to do that, which you don't have. Even if it doesn't cost you money, if it's all internal and you're doing this with an internal department and it's all sort of wooden dollars and you're not paying a third party, even if you don't have to pay for it, it's going to cost you time. It's going to cost you time and rework, and usually you don't have time on these projects. It's very tight, very aggressive. So it could cost you money, could cost you time. Then of course, could cost you reputation damage. You don't want to be seen to be getting things wrong, because if you start having to raise lots of change requests in the build phase, people are going to start asking, why are we raising all these change requests? Why wasn't this designed correctly in the first place? That's not a very nice position to be in. You're always going to have some changes that are unavoidable. You can't get it spot on the first time. You can't anticipate everything, and hindsight is a great thing, but you can try and reduce it if possible. So that's why. Now, as a project manager, you don't have to really understand the design document. I'll be honest, I don't think I've ever really sat down and read a design document end to end fully myself, because I don't need to. You have people in your team that should be doing that. Your SMEs, your engineers, your functional consultants, your architects. Those are the people that need to be understanding the document. You should have a basic understanding of the solution, but you don't have to have a technical understanding of all the underlying detail. That's a misconception, and people shy away from being technical project managers because they think they have to be really technical and know about IT. You don't. I don't really know a great level of detail about IT, but I know how to manage IT resources, and that's the difference. And I know the basics of it. I know the high level, I suppose, terminology and fundamentals to be able to do this, and you pick that up with experience. You don't have to take courses. You can just get stuck in and start learning through projects, through experience. So yeah, you don't have to understand the detail, but you do need to coordinate the review of the document and the sign off. So it does pay to understand this and how it works and understand these common mistakes. So I've talked about what a design document is. I've said why it's important for you. So now let's jump into the common mistakes. Well, the first common mistake I see on a lot of design documents is regarding the detail in regards to how data is moved from one point to another point in the landscape, either within the application or the system that you're building or upgrading, or between different systems in your design. Data always has to move and flow through systems. It's very common. It starts from a point A. How does the data get into the system? It will move across, and usually you have some kind of output, either in a batch file, or files that are delivered through a batch, or reports that are taken out, or some kind of extract. Somehow the data is going to move through the system. It's very common. It's very rare for it just go into one place and stay there, although that would be ideal if there's just one source and it never changed. But the common mistake I see is in your design document, you'll have arrows pointing from A to B to C in terms of the data moving, but there's usually the detail lacking in exactly how that data is going to be transferred. There may be a high level description. We'll use this bit of software or something, but through experience, I've noticed that there are usually problems when it comes to the build phase, looking back at the design document, and people are saying, well, how are we going to move this data, or how exactly is it going to work? You need to get to the exact detail in the design document so you're not scratching your head down the line and wasting time figuring it out, because it can have an impact. So be it through something like a Connect Direct job, or if you're just going to have a database connection, whatever you're going to use, just make sure it's very clear in the design document, how is that data going to transfer? So again, that's just my personal experience, but I've seen that on quite a few design documents. So number one, make sure it's very clear how the data is going to flow through the system or the applications or your overall landscape. So that's common mistake number one. Common mistake number two is the error handling functionality and process. So you want to make sure, as I say, if you have data moving from point A to point B to point C, you have controls in there. So if the data is incorrect, or if it doesn't actually transfer, it doesn't go across correctly, or it corrupts, or it just fails completely, you're going to have a process for dealing with that. And not only dealing with it, for alerting you as the end user, or alerting your IT team that something has gone wrong. Again, that's often overlooked. That detail isn't there, and it's really important, because when you come to using this thing in live, if things go wrong in their system, you want to know about it, and you want to know what the process is for putting it right. Is it automatic? Is it done through manual intervention once you've been alerted? All that detail needs to be worked through, and ideally you should have the design for it, the functionality of how it's going to work in your design document. You don't necessarily have to have the operational process in terms of what you do to kind of fix it, but it should be clear in the design document if you need that manual intervention, that you know about it. Otherwise, it comes to 3 weeks before you go live and you haven't got your operational run book in place in terms of what do you need to do in all these scenarios if things go wrong. So make sure when you're going through your design document with your team that you think about what happens at every point if the data doesn't arrive correctly, if it doesn't arrive at all, if it goes wrong, how are you going to be alerted, and what is the process for putting that right if there is going to be a process. If there isn't, then you just have to agree that and make it clear in the design document that that is part of the design. So you can't come to your build phase and realize that you haven't got a process in place, and people think, right, well, get it in there. If you say, right, well, that was never part of the design and it's clearly stated there, then you can't be put at blame. So that is common mistake number 2. The last mistake is not so much about the content of the design document, but more about the process of getting that document approved and signed off. As I say, this is a very, very important document because your build is based off this document. So if the document is not right, then your build is not going to be right. So it's very important, once that document is done, that you have the right level of sign off. So number 1, you need to identify the right people to sign it off, or the people that are going to want to see it, that can understand it, that have a stake in your project. You should at least send it to them out of courtesy and just request they review it. And if they don't want to, they can let you know, get that acknowledgement if they're not going to read it. Because you don't want to go down the line in your testing phase and people start questioning the design and questioning why it's been built this way. But if you can say, well, sorry, you saw the design document and you signed it off, you've covered your own back, and they can't throw up any excuses or make any noise. So that's number 1. Make sure you identify the right people, get them to sign it off, make sure they actually do it. And even if you're not completely sure whether they should be, just give them the option and make sure they acknowledge that they've received it. And if they don't want to sign it off, or they don't feel they should do, they can let you know in advance. The other thing is to actually make sure people do read it. Now, this is real world technical project management, and in the real world, I hate to say it, but sometimes people will sign off documents that they haven't actually read. Of course, I've never done that. Of course, I would never do that. But I hear that potentially some people may receive a document. They're so busy because the project world is incredibly busy. They just think, oh, you know, what's it going to hurt if I just approve it and sign it off? I'm sure everyone else has read it, so it shouldn't be a big risk. And and it doesn't really matter because no one's going to know until, you know, 6 months down the line, until we get into testing, by which point no one will really care and trace it back to me. So unfortunately that does happen. So you want to make sure that people are honestly signing off and they have actually read it. Now, it's hard to know if they have. Of course, you'll have some people in your team that you trust and you know are all over it. There's several ways you can do that. Number 1 is you can have constant reviews of the document as it's being written. So if you've got a team that are writing that design document, make sure you have regular checkpoints with them and your team so they can walk through the bit they've done. You can almost kind of sign off one bit at a time. So you're all on the call together, record it if you can, record the meeting so you can see clearly that people are paying attention and watching it. Make sure everyone's engaged. They're not just sitting there with their camera off and not listening. Even better if you can do it in a room so you know people are actually listening. But yeah, that's one way of doing it. Make sure you have sessions to review it as it's being created. If you can't do that, at the very least, once the document is available, have a workshop and invite all the people that need to sign it off and have a walkthrough. So the author needs to walk through the document from beginning to end so people can ask questions as they're going through it, and they can, you know, make amends if they need to, and you can do it that way. But make sure the people that need to sign it off are actually reading it and not just signing it off and pretending they've read it, because it will bite you down the line. Trust me, I know what I'm talking about. Okay, so that's pretty much it. We're over time, so I'm not going to do a recap in this video, but if you want to hear it again, you can just watch the video again. So if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to subscribe, hit that subscribe button. I'm doing daily videos, about 10 minutes each one, all about technical project management, insider tips and tricks that you need to know if you are new to project management. And until the next time, please take care.